Hello and welcome to 11FS Spotlight. I'm Benjamin Ensor. In this show, we shine a spotlight on the best and brightest in the tech and financial services industries to try and understand what gets them going and growing and what they think the future of the industry will look like. On today's Spotlight, I'm delighted to be joined by Justin Bauer, Chief Product Officer of Amplitude, who's come all the way to our studio in London from San Francisco to join us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's really good to have you. So on the show, we're going to talk about Amplitude and take a dive into the power of data. So to start off with, for viewers who might not be familiar with Amplitude, can you give us the sort of 1-minute pitch for what is Amplitude, what does it do?
Yeah. So Amplitude, our mission is to help companies build better products through the data. And we've built a platform that gives our customers self-serve visibility into the entire digital customer journey. And we make it possible for non-technical users to be able to access that data, understand what behavior is happening within their digital products, measure the impact of their work, and be able to see how that's driving business outcomes that matter for their company.
Excellent. There's obviously other flavors available, right? There are other companies that do some of those things. What makes Amplitude sort of different? What makes you stand out?
Yeah. So first, it's that focus on the product data. There's a lot of different analytics companies out there. For us, it's really centered around product and how intuitive it is for people that are in product or marketing roles, that self-serve access. This isn't about writing SQL, having to be a technical analyst. It's about the folks who are making feature decisions, making campaign decisions. They now have access for the first time to be able to use that data. It's a very intuitive interface built for those types of teams. We also allow people to not just get insights, but also take action on that. So you can directly go from an insight, say, identify a group of users who are using a certain feature within your product or engaging with certain content. And you could directly then connect that to a message you might send them or run an experiment. You can do all of that within the platform directly. And so that integrated nature is a big differentiator for us as well.
Okay, so the kind of action that a product manager or a marketer could take from within the platform is, as you say, changing some messaging or testing some different things, changing colors, changing messages,
Or releasing a new feature.
What about changing something like pricing? I mean,
So you can change pricing. You could target users based on how well they've used your product to figure out maybe different discounts you might want to offer to them. Or maybe you offer a free trial to certain types of users because you've seen them engage in a way that makes them look like someone that might want to purchase.
But the key point is it's designed for the marketers, the product owners, etc. It's designed to be used by them. You don't have to be a software nerd.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. And can you tell us a little bit about your role?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah.
And what does your day-to-day look like?
For sure. So I'm the Chief Product Officer. So I oversee product design, growth, operations, analytics at the company. Been there for the past 7.5 years, so most of the history of the company. My day-to-day is a lot of it's talking to customers, understanding what pain points they have, what they're trying to solve within their data stack, working with my team to create new features for them, improve the existing customer experience. And overall building out the company, the culture that is Amplitude.
So you're a product officer whose job is to make other product officers successful.
Yes, it's a very meta role.
Do you get your clients telling you how to do your job differently? Often?
Oh, for sure. In fact, one of my favorite parts of the job is I get to learn with a lot of our clients. I mean, I get to partner with a number of chief product officers. I feel like many of us have actually learned. It's a relatively new role. I think product's only been around for maybe 15 or 20 years. And so a number of us are kind of learning as we're going. And the fact that I get to work with our customers and we get to share stories. And I definitely get feedback on things that we can improve. No question. But I love it.
And how do you find reactions in different markets around the world? Have you found that there are countries in the world where sort of product managers have sort of really embraced your product and really immediately understood what it was, and other markets where you've had to do a lot more explaining or you found a lot of reluctance? Have you found different attitudes in different parts of the world or even different industry sectors? Yeah,
it's a great question. So I think geographically, I've seen a lot of convergence. And actually, that's changed a lot within the past couple of years. I think when I first even came out to Europe, with Amplitude back in 2016, it did feel like product was still emerging and not a lot of people knew about the product. Well, I think that's actually changed quite a bit. Every single time I come out here, I try to come out at least once a year. It's definitely, I see it progress even more to the point now, it feels like the conversations I'm having here are no different than the kind of conversations I'm having within the States. And I think that's true within APJ as well. I think industries, though, is a little different. I do think some industries have come along a lot faster than others in terms of driving their business through digital product. Obviously, tech native, like tech is clear. FinTech is another one, which we're going to talk about today. Media is another one where I've seen anywhere where there can be a direct customer relationship. Then we're seeing technology start to disrupt that. And so then that's what the role of the product manager is to how to figure out how to create great technology that can help you serve your customer.
Presumably it helps if you've got an intangible product, so like media, fintech, because then it's easier to get data. Obviously you can get data from physical products, but you've got to have some kind of way of monitoring and gathering that data.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and I think in many ways, a lot of the physical world is becoming the digital world. And so with that, we're seeing then one of the benefits is the fact that we can actually instrument that. We can understand that, and we can use that to improve that experience. And that's what our customers do. They use that data to continuously optimize and improve the customer experience, which is largely now through digital.
So you talked about the tech industry, the fintech industry, media, etc. What about some of the more traditional, established financial services sectors and the companies in those? So banks, lenders, insurance companies, investment management companies. Are you finding that you're getting some of the sort of older, more established companies starting to sort of knock on your door? Do you have lots of them as customers already? How are more established financial services companies responding?
I think we're definitely seeing that. I think the pandemic actually had a huge impact on that because we went from a world where you couldn't have face-to-face interactions. Digital was the only way that you could really interact with your customers. And so that probably accelerated digital transformation by 10 years. And that jump-started a number of conversations with those types of companies as to how can they really start to unleash the power of digital. I think at the same time, they were seeing a lot of startups and competitors start to encroach in their space. So it's kind of the confluence of both, which I think woke up a number of companies. And now they see this as the number one driver of growth for them is actually through digital.
And are you seeing that same establishment of the product role happening in more established companies as well as in the fintech and the tech companies?
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think it's interesting because you're actually now starting to see that difference in culture where traditionally, I think, in traditional companies, it tends to be a bit more of a top-down, for folks who are familiar with software development, a little bit more waterfall project-based. Whereas I think for those of us who are in digital product, it's much more agile, right? We don't know exactly when something will be delivered. It's continuously optimizing. You're learning alongside the customers. It's hard to have a specific spec that you're meeting because maybe it doesn't work. And actually a lot of things fail. You take a lot of risks, but when it succeeds big. Those cultures don't always align well. And so a lot of my conversations now with chief product officers in traditional companies is about how do we take the best of the product culture and help me transform the traditional culture and bring those together. It's definitely a challenge. It's change management. But I think in the end, those that are able to successfully do that, they end up creating amazing new experiences for their customers through digital. I think those will be the winners of the next decade.
I think there's going to be a lot of people watching this who recognize that culture clash and have been on, one side or other or both of it. Presumably, if you're working in a waterfall way, it's actually harder to use Amplitude's product because you don't look at the data until it's too late, right? I mean, do you have a lot of sort of like waterfall customers using this? Well, obviously, you're not going to name them, but
we have some. we do have some, and I think it's all a spectrum, right, for where you're at in that journey. So
yeah, I realize it's not black and white.
Like I think most companies now are along the day of develop something for 2 years and then ship it, but it might be going from 2 years to 1 year. And then learning. And then how do you go from 1 year down to 6 months or 6 months down to 3 months, right? And so those iteration cycles are starting to get faster. And you do that because the data can help you learn, right? What you started working on 2 years ago, that's based on customer needs then. Very different by the time you ship that thing 2 years later. Whereas if you can break it down into something that's in 3 months. Now you can learn with the customer. You might actually see, oh, actually this thing didn't make sense. Let's actually adjust and go here. And so a big part of our job is actually helping them see how the data can help change the way they ship. And you don't have to actually take these super long cycles. You can actually take a lot shorter cycle and improve with the customer. And so that's part of that transformation that's happening within the industry.
Let's sort of dig into a bit more detail and sort of into the core of that and how data can really help product managers and companies be more successful. So what does sort of success look like for a financial services product? How do you know that a financial services product is doing well? What sorts of things are product managers looking at and looking for? Mm-hmm. And how does data help them?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, you're trying to identify metrics that both reflect business value, but also customer value, mm-hmm. right? And so the top level metric is, revenue, right? Like at the end of the day, right? But it's how do you showcase what you are doing is actually driving that revenue, right? For your company. And so you're going to measure things like subscriptions, obviously, but then what are the leading indicators of that? Like talk about free to paid. That's like a big movement within a lot of fintech companies, and talk about Amplitude customers where their initial experience they have with their users is actually not through a paid arrangement, it's actually a free product. So like ClearScore is an example of a customer of ours based here in the UK, and they're the largest free credit card offering. They've built out an amazing financial services platform around that. The first experience, though, you're not paying for that, right? It's a free experience. And so a lot of it is then, one, how many users can they get to start to use that free offering, but are they able to convert them then to one of their paid offerings? And
so they're getting a lot of data then on those free
That is data. You have hypotheses around it, but then you actually use the data to figure out like, oh, when people actually explore and use our products in this way, they're more likely to convert. This type of content actually gets them to potentially buy earlier. And the data helps you see that.
How do you do this sort of attribution, right? Because, so you've got this product manager, she's built this amazing product, let's say, and a customer signs up to it. How do you know what triggered that customer? Was it really the content? Maybe it was just the demographics. Maybe that customer was just going to buy anyway. How do you figure out what is it that's prompted that action, or what is it? What's causation, right? Because correlation is easy to spot. How do you figure out what the correlation is? And I know you can't always know, but how do you start getting at that?
The start is basically being able to have visibility across everything. That's like, so even understanding correlation is probably half the battle, and a lot of things that people don't know. Literally just understanding what are all of your users doing, where are they engaging with content, not. That's the base level visibility that we provide. Then how do you go from correlation to causation? A series of different experiments that you run. We have an experimentation offering, so you can go from this insight that you have, oh, I think this actually might be a driver, and then go run an experiment. Actually see if that's the case, and then you can have a control group, a holdback group.
How do you do that? Because that's a really crucial point, having that control group.
Yeah. So part of us, so we offer basically feature delivery capabilities, and so we're in the code base, and then we can actually then, for half the users, we'll randomly select half the users that don't get an offering and half the users that do. And then we can compare them and actually see, based on their exposure to this one feature, did it actually lead towards them converting?
And this feature might be just a different marketing message, it might be a price discount, it might be some additional feature in the product.
Exactly, could be a free trial.
Could be all sorts of things.
Exactly.
Whatever the product manager comes up with is in their sort of hypothesis.
Exactly. And then we can test that and actually determine if there's causal lift.
And if we're at a big company and we've got hundreds of thousands or millions of customers, let's say it's a big bank or a big insurance company and so on, can you do sort of multivariate testing where you can run multiple experiments?
Right. Exactly. And we've got it's called flag layering, so the ability to actually run different experiments with different sets of users. We can do global holdouts. There's a lot of capabilities that we have to be able to do experiments at scale.
We're sort of making some assumptions about which touch points we're talking about. We haven't really said explicitly. Are we talking about websites? Are we talking about mobile apps? Are we talking about messaging on ATMs? Which platforms can you support?
So any digital platform we can support. That's one of the other advantages of Amplitude. We were built in this multi-platform world. So mobile, web, IoT, kiosks, anything that has a digital interface, we can instrument. and then can start to stitch together that into a unified customer profile so that you can actually see for that user all the different interactions that they have. You can also bring in the offline transactions. So we can connect to different data warehouses, databases, and so you could even pull in your offline conversation. I'm sure it gets logged with a banker as an example. We can pull that data in so you can get that full view of the customer life cycle and lifetime value.
What about interactions with advisors? Right? So a lot of the industry has advisors, particularly for more complex products, investments, and such like. Can you do experiments? Maybe you're not doing this yet. Maybe this is a future development. I don't know. Can you do experiments where you're showing the advisor a message, and then seeing how the customer responds to that? So you could prompt, I don't know, someone in a contact center or a financial advisor, hey, if you offer them this. Can you do those kind of experiments?
Yeah, so contact center, yes. So that's already, definitely we have customers that use us where they actually have the contact center rep. One will actually use Amplitude to go through and actually just see what all things the customers actually interacted with. It helps them understand this person's calling in for something, actually get that context. And then we can actually create what we call targeted audiences. So these are types of users who might be eligible for certain products. And so then that contact center rep can actually have that conversation. I'm unaware of that happening with like an investment advisor, but it certainly could. The technology is there.
Yeah, maybe the mindset in the investment firms has got a way to go to catch up on the opportunity. Maybe this video will help. You don't actually offer contact center software yourself, right? So this is you're integrating Amplitude with existing platforms and technologies.
That's correct. Yeah. And we believe in that open platform ecosystem. So we connect to over 100 different interfaces that other parts of the SaaS ecosystem. We want to make sure any data, any insights that are in Amplitude, we can easily get that into other tools.
So it's all cloud-based?
Yes, That's right.
How long do those sort of integrations take?
Most of them are real-time. And so it really depends. All of our APIs are real time. So within a minute of the interaction happening on that digital device, we will see it in Amplitude. It depends on the partner how quickly they can actually bring that into their system. But many of the ones that are more modern, they reflect that as well. And so literally, you can actually do personalization where you're looking at things within real time.
So if you've got a modern digital tech stack, a product manager can potentially come up with an idea in the morning, test it in the early afternoon, and have some results by the evening of this idea you had.
That's
really
correct.
Didn't work.
Yes,
or really
exactly.
did work, or whatever.
And that loop, we believe, is the competitive differentiator this decade. How quickly you can go from data to insight to action and measure that. That's why companies win.
Can you give us any specific examples of how you've helped particular companies? Because I suspect there'll be people watching the video saying, this is great, but who have you worked with? What have you done? And I realize you may not be able to disclose lots of details about specific clients, but could you give us an example or two of the types of sort of results or uplift or impact
for sure.
a couple of your customers have achieved?
Yeah, I mentioned ClearScore, right? So that's one here in the UK. And in partnering with us, they were able to actually double the number of subscriptions that they had. And they did that by meticulously going through the entire customer journey and seeing where all the different friction points were, and also identifying things that helped users convert, changing the first-time user experience, changing all different parts of, like I said, that journey. And over the course of many, many experiments, I think they quintupled the number of experiments that they ran from the previous year. Ended up being over 100 different experiments that led to a 2x. Growth.
So they really optimized that journey through a whole series of experiments.
And it's not, you don't know which of those 100 experiments is going to be the one, right? You can try to have the intuition, but you got to test and learn. And a lot of the failed experiments lead to the winning ones. I think another example of that, Square, so a company based out in San Francisco where I'm at, but obviously a global company. And we really helped them identify who are folks who are highly likely to be able to convert to their paid offerings. Once again, they lead with a lot of different free solutions, and they were able to create targeted audiences and then give those audiences specific offers based on what they had done in the product, and that ended up having a significant increase in the number of subscriptions they had as well.
A lot of the examples we've talked about have been fintechs converting free users into actual customers and paying for things, which is fantastic. What about things like cross-selling, where you're trying to cross-sell products to existing users, you're trying to sell them existing customers, trying to sell them other products and so on. Have you got customers doing those kinds of things, or maybe retention? Maybe there's things you can see that lead to people defecting and you can then take action to retain those customers?
Yes. Yeah, both of those are key types of analysis you can do in Amplitude. So we have a type of analysis called predictive cohorts. So the way to think about that is you've got a set of users, and we can actually help predict what those users will do. So based on previous behavior, how likely are they to convert, or how likely are they to churn? And so that can be a really powerful analysis, because then you can actually, before you get a customer into that state of churning, let's say, interact with them, and then we'll tell you the reasons why we predicted that customer is likely to churn. And so that could be they had a poor experience. You might want to reach out to them and apologize for that. Or they haven't been using something that they actually signed up for. You've made changes against that. Maybe the PM has actually launched a couple new features. Let them know about that. And in the same way, we can do that. Who's likely to cross-sell? We actually tell you these are the things that users do, which suggests that they are likely to then want to buy this additional product.
They've got a sort of behavioral propensity, maybe demographic and other propensities as well.
And we look at
a number of things.
The demographics as well as the behaviors. And then once again, you can take action on that. You create that audience and immediately connect that to your messaging tool or whatever way that you interact with your customers, or directly change the product. Run an experiment with that user to actually, those group of users, to see if you can actually change their conversion rate.
Love it. Love it. Really, really powerful stuff. Unfortunately, we're running out of time for the video. So as we come to the end of the show, we want to finish off by asking you one last question. What's the best advice that you can give to companies that are listening to this and thinking about how do we maximize the benefits of the data that we have and the benefits that data can bring? What's your advice to those kinds of companies?
So I think the number one thing is using data to improve the customer experience. And it's that velocity and speed that you're operating at. That is the key. Like I said, I think that is going to be the big differentiator of this decade. And so that's why it's so important to make sure that you're giving the folks who are making those decisions, PMs and marketers, direct access to that data. You cannot be locked into the hands of analysts and data scientists. Yes, they're obviously part of this whole ecosystem, but you've got to ensure that PMs and marketers can ask and answer questions so they can make those changes quickly.
Make it really easy for them to do that. Yeah.
Exactly. And that unlocks data-driven decision-making, and we've seen that leads towards better digital experiences and ultimately better outcomes for those customers.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Fantastic. Well, Justin, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people find out more about you and everything you're getting up to?
Yeah, so they can follow me on Twitter, Justin J. Bauer, LinkedIn, just Justin Bauer. They can also go to the Amplitude website. I write a lot of content there as well, so amplitude.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me. That's all we have time for in this show. Please make sure you follow 11FS on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok to stay updated with all the cool stuff we're doing. If you enjoy the show, please do subscribe to the 11FS YouTube channel, where you can also catch up on previous episodes of Spotlight. Have a great week, and thank you. Goodbye.